3 months ago, my mom married my stepfather, and I was forced to join them on vacation in the countryside of Pennsylvania. It was Christmas, and Jim wanted to show off his pretty younger wife to his family. Without giving me any context, he had made it excessively clear that he would take a belt to me if he caught me with anything electrical. So I had suddenly opted to leave my phone and Game Boy in my room. I hated the idea of not being able to talk to my friends or play Pokemon for 2 weeks, and I was pissed at Jim for taking away the things that made me happy. When we pulled our rusty Chevrolet up to the end of the long, weed-strewn driveway, I was confused. On the ride, my mom had explained to me that Jim's family was Amish, but we were in front of a semi-dilapidated mansion that I could only partially see through the flurrying snow. The term Amish had conjured images of straw hats, quilts, dark clothes, big red barns, and simple houses. Not empty corridors, unused fireplaces, gothic attire, and moth-eaten furniture. Jim, as though talking to a stupid child, explained with a mocking sort of slowness that his family owned the property and gathered there each Christmas, but that none of them actually lived there year-round. I was spared from my mutinous, snappy thoughts getting me into trouble by the slamming of a heavy door. In seconds, our car was swarmed by a group of about 10 kids, all of whom looked to be fairly close to my age. They were in the plain black overalls and navy knee-length dresses I had been expecting, and every wheat-colored bunch of hair was protected from the chilling flakes by a bonnet or wide-brimmed hat. The kids were clamoring for Uncle Jim's attention, and after being introduced to my mom and I, they bombarded us with questions about the secular world. Jim and my mom answered each inquiry good-naturedly as the kids helped us unload the car, but I stayed silent. I lingered at the back of the group, deflecting any questions with shrugs or glares. They quickly caught on that they shouldn't bother me, so I was left alone outside to get my own luggage. As I yanked my Teen Titans backpack out of the trunk, I noticed that one little auburn-haired boy was separate from the group. He was peeking out the window at us with bulging eyes, his tiny hands clasped to the side of his face as though he were hiding it. I wondered why he wasn't outside with the other kids, but I didn't care enough to dwell on it as I trudged inside. Not freezing was much more important to me than what some bug-eyed, snot-nosed toddler was up to. The next few hours were a whirlwind as I was introduced to what felt like a never-ending stream of adults. After dinner, everyone under 15 was shooed away, and we were told to go play in the upstairs rooms. I wanted to stay with my mom, but she told me to go have some fun with Jim's nieces and nephews. Due to arguing with her, I had been the last kid to leave the dining room, which meant that I had to climb the creepy staircase alone. The archaic grand staircase slouched at the far end of the hallway that was connected to the dining room, and swaddled in darkness. The house did have electricity, but Jim's family refused to get the old generator up and running. Instead, they had opted to light candles, which by that hour were sputtering in their sconces. They were dim and intermittently placed, so their light barely helped me. I stood in the dining room doorway, basking in my last few moments of bright light as I gathered my courage. I mentally pumped myself up to make a sprint for the staircase, and I reminded myself that there was nothing scary in the house. On the count of 3, I thundered into a run, my sneakers slapping along the old floorboards. I easily pounded up the ultra-wide stairs, but I cringed at each creak of the old, warped planks. Halfway up the stairs I froze, turning my head to look at the person running next to me. There was no one there. I looked up and down the steps, my eyes widening in bewilderment, and that was when I felt something shove against my chest. I tottered, nearly falling backwards down the staircase, but I was able to grasp the rail just in time. I bit back a scream, the air whooshing out of my lungs as the pain of a phantom impact knocked the wind out of me. I clung to the rotting wood, my body shaking so badly that my teeth were chattering. I couldn't move or cry out, and I just wanted my mom. I spent the next 10 minutes with splinters digging into me, my knees tucked up to my chest as my arms encircled the banister. Once I began to calm down, my breathing returned normal. I noticed something that wasn't there before. My nose caught the scent of fresh aftershave, the cheap type that dollar stores sell. It was the exact brand Jim used, but even when I had been sitting right next to him at dinner, I could barely smell it over the sense of food in the old house. I looked around for him, but I would have seen anyone coming down from upstairs, and I would have heard if anyone followed me from the dining room. For a moment I thought I heard mocking laughter, but the sound vanished in an instant. A shiver curled through the hairs on the back of my neck, but I finally stood on my gelatin-like legs. It was all I could do not to flee the hateful steps and fling myself into my mom's arms, and I told myself that I wasn't going to be a wimp in front of the other kids. I shook myself out of my thoughts, forcing my muscles to carry me up the last few steps. As I made it to the top of the stairs, I was haloed by candlelight, and I could hear the other kids laughing. I followed the sound, letting it lead me down a maze of corridors. I finally found the old parlor room they were gathered in, and when I ducked through the arched doorway, I was unnerved to suddenly have 12 eyes on me. Hey guys, what's up? I cringed at the anxiety-filled too high pitch of my voice, but the kids just beckoned me in as though I wasn't acting like a total spaz. I sort of talked to a few of them over dinner, a boy named Charles and a girl named Terry, so by now at least they knew I wasn't quite as grouchy as I had been earlier. The kids had been chatting about the gifts they were hoping to get, which all consisted of food, but then someone suggested that we play a game. The idea was morphed into hide-and-seek, with a girl named Margaret being the first seeker. We agreed to stay on the second floor, which I was secretly grateful for. I had no idea where to hide, but I soon realized by that point even more of the candles had perished in the drafty hallways. Finding shadowy covered furniture to hide under or behind was too easy. For the first 3 seekers, I was the last kid found, and the younger kids began looking at me with something akin to awe. I was used to playing manhunt without flashlights, so the lack of good lighting was a bonus for me. An hour later, it was finally my turn to be the seeker, and I was enjoying the game so much that I actually whistled as I was looking for people. After about 5 minutes, I had found the worst hiders. By the 15-minute mark, I had discovered the better hiders, and then all I had left to do was find a boy named Dan who was about my age. I scoured the first few rooms, but no luck. I began creeping slowly down one wing of the hallway, and on my way past the safety zone room, I checked to make sure the kids who had been discovered stayed in place. I took a moment to count, noting absent-mindedly that all 10 of them were there. Just as I was going to turn back to the hallway, it hit me. There were 10 kids in that room, yet I still hadn't found Dan. A third and fourth count yielded the same result, and I felt my stomach clench. Dan definitely wasn't among them, but I couldn't tell which kid didn't belong. Being related, they all looked somewhat similar, and I just didn't know them well enough to know which one hadn't been there before. They were all chatting or reading while they waited for Dan and I, and none of them looked out of place. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and rationed that another of Jim's nieces or nephews must have shown up while I was looking for the hiders. I reasoned that I must have still been feeling weird from my near accident earlier, and I knew I needed to chill out. When I opened my eyes, I subconsciously began counting them again, my brow furrowing as I progressed. 9. Again and again I counted, each time getting 9. Finally, I couldn't take it. I had been standing in the doorway like some sort of weird creeper, and I needed to go find Dan. I left the room, but it turned out that I was too distracted to win. Within 2 minutes, Dan had managed to sneak past me into the safety zone. When I heard his triumphant shout, I walked numbly back to the room, my mind still focused on how I could have so grossly miscounted. When I entered the room, I took a quick count, and there were 11 kids. Without drawing attention to myself, I sidled up to Charles, my voice barely above a whisper. "Hey, Charles, how many of you and your cousins are here? Is it 10 or 11 of you?"
"There's 10 of us. Why do you ask?"
No reason, just, making sure I've met everyone." His eyebrow arched skeptically, and before I could say anything, he walked toward the doorway, gesturing for me to follow. He stopped long enough to tell Terry that he was going to show me where the nearest bathroom was, when he led me into the now dark hallway. We moved out of the circle of light from the doorway, and he glanced back to make sure we hadn't been followed.
"You've seen him too, haven't you?"
"Seen who? What the heck are you talking about?"
"Little boy? About this tall? Hands on his face?"
"Yeah, which one of your cousins is he?"
"He isn't. At least, not anymore."
What kind of meds was this kid on? Charles wasn't making any sense, and I felt my bad mood rapidly returning. "Dude, what are you talking about? Be straight with me. I've had enough weird stuff happen today."
"The boy was my cousin James, as in Uncle Jim's son. He fell down the hallway stairs and died when he was 3. His head was smashed in like a pumpkin. His mom was devil-touched. She believed that Uncle Jim had killed him when he was drunk."
"But, Jim doesn't drink."
"Not now, but he used to years ago. That's why he left our community to move to the city, which is where he met your mother.
No way. Sure, I think Jim's kind of a jerk sometimes, but he wouldn't kill a kid, right? Charles looked down, scuffing his shoe along the edge of the threadbare carpet. Of course not. He would never hurt someone. This kid clearly didn't know Jim well. On a daily basis, Jim slapped and verbally abused my mom, and I overheard her telling my grandma she would stay with him because she was pregnant. Charles, be real with me. Do you think he could have hurt this kid? For a moment, Charles looked back towards the light-filled room, and I almost thought he was going to bolt instead of answer me.
Yeah, I do. I know he killed James. I was there when it happened, but no one believed me. I had snuck downstairs to eat a cookie before breakfast, and I saw the whole thing from the dining room doorway. They all thought I was too young to remember it right, or that I was making it up to get attention. My father paddled me so hard I never brought it up again.
Oh, damn. You saw him do it? Why? What in the hell did that kid ever do to Jim?
He didn't do anything. James was young, and young kids are not smart by default. Unfortunately, Uncle Jim has no tolerance for anything he considers stupidity, and he was trying to get James to walk down the stairs normally on Christmas morning 3 years ago. Those steps are scary, and when James refused to walk down them, Uncle Jim pushed him. He laughed as James fell, and he laughed more as James cried out for his mother right before he died. The police ruled it an accident, but Terry and I think that James lingers because he's never gotten justice for the murder. Uncle Jim had to know what would happen, or at least have an idea that it could.
With that, he marched back to the parlor room, and I was left alone in the flickering shadows. I sank to my knees, a panic-laced coldness seeping into my veins as I cradled my head in my hands. My mom would never believe me, especially knowing that I had never gotten along well with Jim, but I couldn't sit quietly any longer. If Jim had killed one kid so easily, so coldly, then what would stop him from killing another? The answer was simple. I would. If a child could fall down those rickety old stairs and have the death be labeled as an accident, then why couldn't an adult know that the stairs were even worse? Amish Christmas was written by user Mythology Loves Horror at reddit.com and was narrated by Winterbeat, featuring the White Rabbit.